Speaking of pangmayaman, thank you. Because I have another topic, this time my topic. Sorry po. During your father's term, okay, during your father's term was the first and one of the biggest pushes for the conservation and development of Philippine culture and arts. In
Mm,
1968, there was the first Conservation Act was passed under your father's term. He
mm,
created the National Artist Awards. He was
mhm.
the first to designate cultural property and national historical landmarks.
Yes.
Now, we have a law enacted in 2009 called the Heritage Act of 2009, which supposedly takes all of these into consideration, but has been very how do you call it, weakly implemented.
Mm-mm.
So now we have this law, but what I need to hear is what is our direction for culture and arts now? Because everything is in there. There's tourism, there's education, there's
Mm-mm.
national identity. What are your plans for this sector? I have so many high hopes because of the Marcos years. What about the
Well,
second Marcos year?
well, that is precisely that is precisely the
Sorry.
message that we have been going around and talking about yung aming sinasabi na unity na pagkakaisa. And I'm sometimes asked, what do you feel is the most important legacy that your father left to the Philippines? And I will and of course marami siyang achievement in terms of yun na nga, all of the systems that were put in place. But I think the most important thing, the most important legacy of my father was a sense of nationhood. And then when we at the time felt very strongly about how being Filipino, and we had a
Yes.
very clear idea that Pinoy ako eh. Pinoy ako, ganito kami, ganito. And the reason why that happened is because what is a culture. It is a shared sense of self, right? It is the
Yes.
definition of ourselves as Filipino, because you start number one, as you define yourself, number one, you're a human being. Number two, you're male or you're female, and what's next? I'm Filipino. And that's how fundamental it is. But unless there is a um, uh, a shared understanding or a shared notion, a shared idea of what a Filipino is, then you cannot identify yourself as a Filipino. And that was it was so important that if we're going to get beyond regionalism within the Philippines, that we only consider ourselves Ilocano, we only consider ourselves Tagalog or
There you
Bicolano
go.
or Bisaya or Waray or whatever else you care to categorize us. We had to get a little bit beyond that. Of course, we're very proud where we come from, and that will never go away. But we have to get a little bit beyond that and say we are, in fact, Filipinos, and that's all part of the Philippines. And that is
Yes.
why it was so important that we understand our history, that we understand where we came from, how we came to this place, how we arrived
Yeah.
at this. Why is it that we speak the language that we speak? Why is it that our political system is the way it is? Why is it that we do things the way that we do? Those are the things. And part of that is to recognize the landmarks in our history, literally the landmarks and figuratively the landmarks in our history. Kaya
Evidence.
tayo
Yes.
nagkaganyan dahil sa yung panahon ng Kastila, ganitong nangyari. Nung panahon ng Amerikano, ganito yung nangyari. Nung nagkagera, ganito yung nangyari, etc., etc. So this is and my mother was
Yes.
very much part of that,
Yes.
because ang lagi niyang sinasabi is that she was trying to reintroduce the soul of the Filipino to Filipinos themselves, and then eventually to the rest of the world, which I think
So,
ang dami niyang scholar ngayon. Nung panahon nila,
yun.
marami tayong mga national artists, marami pa tayong mga international artists na hanggang ngayon sikat na sikat. So the what we have to do is remember, if you remember, we even have the Makiling High School for Arts. That was really to develop local arts. The original name of the theater in the complex of the culture was Folk Arts Theater. The folk art theater was there to promote folk art, yung ating local. Hindi na yung
Mm.
kasi magdadala din tayo ng mga sikat. Siyempre, gusto natin manood ng mga singer ng mga international. Pero nandyan yung folk art theater really was para to promote our local art, our local performers, our local artists, lahat yan. And that's what the whole cultural center concept was about. And that's why it really came from a very fundamental desire for the Filipinos to once again feel part of this culture, which is a
So
shared.
uh, how are
What
we
is
going to do it?
well
I mean, there's a law. I don't know
again?
if you have a legislative agenda for this,
Well, we have the
but
law. It actually, but as you play, alam mo naman dito sa Pilipinas, sapat ang batas. Kulang lang talaga lagi sa implementation, kulang sa funding. Kasi hindi napaprioritize. Kasi
oh,
siguro, yung mga nakara, sabi, hindi naman importante yan eh. Hindi, ano ba yan, may statwa dyan, may ganito dito, hindi naman importante yan eh. I-privatize na lang natin lahat yan. Hindi ba? Hindi na
yeah.
trabaho ng gobyerno yan. I disagree.
Mm.
And if they're talking solely about returns, when you have a very strong culture, look at the Southeast Asian countries around
Mm.
us. Let's start with Thailand. Thailand has a Ministry of Temples, Ministry of Culture, and Ministry
Yeah.
of Tourism. Tatlo yan, para lang sa kultura. South
Mm-hmm.
Korea, ganun din. Meron silang ganyan. Vietnam, meron din
Yeah,
silang ganyan.
I'm
Tayo,
painfully aware.
oo, tayo kailangan natin balikan yan. Iniisip, importante yan. Because what is a culture? A culture is a shared consciousness. And
There.
we have to have a consciousness to share. And we have to explain to people, ito tayo, ito ang pagka-Pilipino. Kaya nung panahon, kailangan balik tayo sa panahon na sikat na Pilipino. Hindi, Pinoy ako eh. Galing ako Pilipinas eh. Sikat niya. Alam mo itong mga kasama natin, magagaling lahat yan. And we can do that because we have made a name for ourselves with our OFWs. Kilala na sila that they know what they prefer to have Filipinos. We speak good English. We're hard workers. We're well trained. We are honest. We're even clean. Meron pang kasama ko minsan
So,
na ganyan.
okay, but
So all of
sir,
this, that all derived from that desire to
so
remind
it's
ourselves of that shared consciousness of being a Filipino.
so it's going to be by directive because yeah, we do have a law. Yeah, it has some quirks eh. Kailangan pang ayusin yung batas. But what we need to see is that there is something coming from the highest office of the land saying that okay, LGUs, everybody, this is part of governance because in fact, how can you have governance if you don't know your own culture, you don't know your own history? Then even when we make laws, we can't make laws if we know that it isn't even compatible or yeah, with our culture and our practices.
Exactly. There are things that are work very well for maybe another country that will not apply here simply because that's not the way we do things. That's not how we think. But you see, from that shared consciousness, halimbawa, maliwanag na yung pagka-Pinoy natin, lahat ng pati mga bata, naintindihan nila na ito yung kasaysayan ng ating bansa, ito yung mga pangyayari sa ating bansa. Tapos ang ugali ng Pilipino, ganito talaga, yun ang itinuturo ng mga magulang. And from there, we will know, sige, ano pang kulang natin? Ano bang kulang ng sambayanan? Ano bang kailangan ayusin? Ano bang... And everyone, because nga we are aware of that shared consciousness, we know more or less what it is that the whole country needs, and we will work towards that. Yan pala. O sige, pagandahin natin, magtulungan tayo. Because Pinoy tayo, kailangan natin tulungan yung kapwa nating Pinoy. And it's not an easy thing to do, but Filipinos are very culturally oriented. We
We are,
we
we are.
make we,
Mhm.
Yeah, we are. We pick up on all of these things very quickly. Because
Well,
nakaligtaan lang eh, hindi na papag-usapan. Pag napag-usapan yan, ganun nga pala, tama-tama, naalala ko, ganyan pala yung kinikwento ng aking ninuno, kinikwento ng lolo ko, ganun pala yun.
while we're on the topic, sir, since kultura na lang na, I would like to segue. This is an important question for our viewers. How are you going to manage your family and friends when you become president? Many administrations fail because there are people we can't say no to. It's our nature kasi we're very communal, we're very,
Yeah.
you know, together. So, pagka nahindihan ng pamilya, minsan nagtatampo. So now,
Uh,
you're going to be in a position where people will be constantly coming to you. They'll be the, other
so,
administrations have suffered from this. No
that's
matter how
true.
good they were, it became a problem later on. How
Yeah.
are you going to manage this?
Hindi ba, kaya speaking of shared consciousness and culture, hindi ba, the greatest strength of the Filipino is kayang pakiusapan.
Yun
Pero
na
it
nga
seems
eh.
to be pero that seems to be also our greatest weakness. Kasi kaya ngang pakiusapan, hindi na nasusundan yung rules. Um, the only solution to that is to run it as professionally as possible. If there is a job that needs to be done, don't get your cousin. Get only unless your cousin is the recognized expert in that field, the best Filipino
Uh,
that you can find to work in that field. No, run it professionally. Run it professionally
yes.
and make sure that the people who are in their place in whatever position in the government know their job and are very good at their job, because you cannot be wasting time and resources with people who are not doing their work or who do not know their job or have no good ideas. To pull ourselves out of this economic situation that the pandemic brought, we are going to have to again, to be imaginative and to come up with new solutions. Look at what is happening in technology. There are things that are happening before that we never thought were going to be actually possible. It looked like magic, but it's because people are thinking uh, may tawag lateral thinking, the tawag out
Yes.
of the box, all of these things.
Creative
But we
thinking.
have to
Yes.
be creative, we have to be imaginative, and to do that, you have to have the best people around you. And no matter how good you are, tama yung sinabi mo, kahit gaano kagaling yung namumuno, kung lahat ng tao niya ay tamad o mahina, hindi marunong, hindi alam ang
Or
trabaho,
pakiusap.
wala rin mangyayari. Yun na nga yung
yung,
pakiusap.
yung
Well,
pakiusap eh.
alam mo naman there's always a way. Ano mo yung alam mo naman sa buhay naman there's always a way to compromise kung ano man yung pangangailangan. But let us not compromise the performance of government. Because when government's performance is compromised, it affects immediately tens of millions of people. And so
That's
that's
true.
what we have to watch out for. That's why it's important that you are very assured as a leader, you are very assured that the people that you are going to appoint, or the people that you are going to bring into government, are the best that you can get. And that's and despite
That's
alam
a
mo, and we'll go beyond kamag-anak and may kaibigan na may utang na loob ka, whatever it is, di ba, yung tinulungan ka sa kampanya, you will they want to be put in some kind of position. You
reward
know,
yun eh.
yeah, it's yung mga reward yung mga reward na gano'n. Pero hindi pa rin eh. You really have to find the best people and get to go beyond that kamag-anak and kaibigan.
Mm.
Not only do you have to find the best people, you have to make sure that they are properly performing. Pagka hindi naman tama, hindi na tama yung ginagawa, kailangan sitayin
Management na
mo.
yan.
Oo, you have to
All right.
manage. Magagaling naman na yan eh. So that's really the only I don't think there are any magic bullets to this kind of situation. And again, to go beyond also the kamag-anak and the kahit hindi mo kapartido. Kasi kahit linabanan ka nung last election, Baka magaling talaga. Siya talaga yung marunong
Yeah,
sa
yeah.
hog racing. Oh, lapitan mo, sabihin mo, "O tapos na yung eleksyon, tulungan mo na kami. Pare-pareho naman ang gusto natin, eh. Pareho naman natin gustong pagandahin ito. Tulungan mo na lang ako. At kung ano bang kailangan mo para magawa natin ito." Dapat gano'n ang approach. Hindi kagaya yung nangyayari, lahat ng ginawa nung nakaraan, pangit lahat yan, tigil natin lahat yan. Hindi, tignan natin, baka may nagawang tama, edi ituloy natin. Itong kay Pangulong Duterte, yung kanyang build, ang pakagandang programa yan na kanyang ginawa. Yung kanyang ginawa sa education, SUCs, ginawang libre, napakaganda nun. These are the things that you should recognize. Not just say, ako lang ang marunong. Maraming marunong ng Pilipino, ang gagaling ng Pilipino. You have to get them all to help. It starts from that national consciousness, that the appreciation of our
That's what
culture,
I was looking
the
for, yeah.
understanding of what a Filipino is and what the Filipino needs. It all binds together. Kaya ginawa yan ng panahon ng aking ama dahil it was a necessary part of our nation building.
And still is. Okay, next. One sentence answer, sir. I'll just give you a name
Naku,
or a
ang hirap
phrase.
naman.
Alam ko.
Okay, all right. Okay, I will try
But
to be
it's social media, sir. So
try to be
we
concise.
have to adapt. Okay, first. One sentence response lang. Off the top of your head, Sara Duterte.
Best partner I could have had.
Love it. Nora Honor.
Oh, I'm a big fan.
I knew it. Conrad Banal.
Oh,
Because,
isa pa yan. Si Conrad,
hindi naman kami hindi naman
oh,
kami nagpa-plugging.
has always something worthwhile to listen to say.
Ayan. Renewable energy.
Oh, absolutely necessary in the face of climate change.
The University of the Philippines.
Well, it's still still the premier learning institution in the Philippines and must be well supported by government.
And TFL-CAC.
Expand.
Uy, like that. Universal healthcare law.
Absolutely necessary also. Now we have to implement it properly.
Do you think it's only implementation?
Well, it's funding. Funding is
Yes.
becoming the problem, especially dito na napunta lahat ng pondo sa healthcare sa pandemic. So hindi pa talaga na implement ng mabuti yung universal healthcare. But it's again something close to me. Pero kailangan din bantayan because all the universal healthcare programs of other countries bankrupted those countries. And so we have to be careful on how we apply the universal healthcare law.
Free tertiary education.
Uh, long delayed policy.
Expand.
SUCs, basta't SUCs. Oh,
All
SUCs.
right. Art Tugade.
a good partner in government.
Right. All right. So I have a few more minutes. One more. Okay. My other concern is the internet. Okay. We have difficulty with a duopoly and a new third party coming in, but doesn't seem to be working. We're not getting cheaper, faster, better internet service. What are we going to do with this?
That is a huge problem. That has been highlighted by the pandemic. We were already headed towards the metaverse, as it's now being called. But we were already headed to our greater dependence on the digital infrastructure. Of course, the pandemic accelerated all of that because napunta pati schooling, napunta roon pati yung mga ibang bagay na dating ginagawa nating face-to-face, napunta lahat sa internet. And so, I'm not quite privy to why it is still not, after all the promises that we have heard, over so many years, but di pa nabubuo yan. Because if we look at the other countries, again, is another area we do not have to reinvent the wheel. Uh, one of the most, one of the best examples of infrastructure, of digital infrastructure, is South Korea. So let's send people to South Korea and ask them, how is it? How did you do this? What are the things? And we won't adopt your technology. We'll adopt the latest technologies that are available. Kasi kahit 5G na sila, matagal ng 5G yan. Tingnan natin yung mga bagong 5G, tingnan natin yung mga bagong sistema, yung mga bagong equipment, the hardware, the software.
Right.
I think it's because we have to. There is a very strange. There is a very funny arrangement with our basically two basic internet providers. In that the we have to put again. I think it still makes sense for the government to have the backbone, its own backbone, na pinapagamit
There you go.
sa mga telco. And
All right.
that is an investment that can be done. Um, and will this brings us back? This brings us to another some other concept that I think we should really encourage, and that is the PPP. The government cannot do everything. The private sector cannot do everything. But a partnership between government and private sector can do very many things very, very well. It's
Okay.
just
Very
not
quickly.
easy to do. Mm-mm.
Very quickly now, because we have OFWs watching and hanging on to your every word. In 2 sentences, what is your program for OFWs? How do we plan for their retirement? How about their healthcare? How about their safety while they're abroad?
The solution has come to us in now the newly created Department of Migrant Workers, and that is those the problems that have been arising for our OFWs. Instead of depending on imaginative funding and imaginative like the DFA hihingi ng pera sa justice, kukuha ng abogado. It's not, there's no formal institutionalized method for helping our OFWs, and that will be it. For those who are returning, tapos na ang kontrata, mag-retraining tayo. Ginagawa na natin yan noon eh. Mag-retraining tayo para makabalik ulit sila sa trabaho. Yung mga naipit dito, napilitang umuwi, kausapin natin yung pinanggalingan nilang bansa at sabihin natin, ibalik na natin yung mga, since mula ng pandemya, o pabawas na yung pandemya, unahin nyo naman, i-prioritize naman ninyo yung mga Pilipino na nagtrabaho na dyan, na kinala naman ninyo ng magandang kanilang trabaho. So but there are lots of other, meron na tinanong ako na isang araw, pabahay din ng ating mga
Yes.
umuuwing OFW, yung kanilang health benefits. Kasi iniwanan na nga nila yung korporasyon nila, those benefits no longer apply pag nandito sila. So the universal health care, we can apply that, we can make sure that it's applied properly. These are marami, you know, the simple way to approach all of the issues that surround OFWs is to recognize their contribution to the country and what they have done for the Philippines over, I don't know, we're close to 50 years already. And they kahit papano, the recognition of the world that Filipinos are good workers are because of them. And they have been good ambassadors for our country. And they have been they have been keeping the economy in the difficult times, have been keeping the economy above water. There's no other way to put it. And so we must recognize that, and we should return to them at least a part of what they have given to the Philippines.
Okay, this one might take a while, but there are two aspects to this question. We've asked a lot of things of what you are going to be doing for the country. My turn to ask, what can we do for you when you become president? Sorry, when you become president, what do you want us to do?
What would be most important, of course, would be to work again for national interest, for the nation building. Let us recognize that it is time to return to the concept of nation building. Partisan politics has taken too large a part of our national discussion. And it plays a part. Of course, politics cannot be avoided, but once the part of politics has been played, I think that yung kagaya ng sinabi ko, when we are hiring people, we hire the best. We do not hire because they belong to your party. We hire the best. And that is, I think, the most important thing is that we keep politics in its place. And we always have in our minds the national interest, always have in our minds nation building. It is a phrase that I grew up with, and it was the sole uh, motivating factor, I think, behind the work of my father. And I have adopted that. And I say, let us do what is good for the country. Let us build this nation up. This is not the work of a day. This is a work of a long time, but at least we should start to put in the institutions, the organizations, and the policies in place. And like President Duterte is complaining, hindi niya matapos sa 6 years yung gusto niyang gawin. And 6 years actually is not a long time for a president to do all the work that he has to do. But you can start. You can start. You can strengthen the institutions that you know are going to be necessary to have a stable political system. You have to put in the different elements within the economy, so that our economy is strong and a vibrant part of the global economy. That's very important because we have to think globally now. And so what we need is for people to be working in the right direction, in the same direction, which brings us back again to what you started with the shared consciousness. Let us always remind ourselves we are Filipinos, and no one is going to help Filipinos except Filipinos themselves. But the good part of that is that we have the capabilities. I am so confident that if we tap into the abilities, the industry, the resourcefulness, the kindness, the grace of Filipinos, and we do that, we tap into that properly, I am so confident that we will succeed as long as we're working together, understanding what needs to be done, and sacrificing ourselves for the country. That is most important thing.
One last, we have a short time. I have had the good fortune of representing many heroes in the Philippines. Combat veterans,
Mm.
people who have been nominated for medals of valor. They're
Mm.
alive. They're serving in the AFP.
Mhm.
Um, the AFP's morale is high from this administration. I need a message from you to them. What can you say to our gallant men and women serving in the armed forces? They have been so visible and tirelessly working, particularly in civil defense during the last major typhoon.
Yes. Well,
What message do you have for them?
they should be commended for all the work that they do. I always say we must understand that the military, the uniformed services, are the only part of society uh, whose social contract with the state includes putting life and limb in danger. That social contract is only for the men and women in the military, and that is what us civilians we have to recognize, that we are in fact, we although they are quiet, they are in their camps, they are not in our they're not in our everyday dealings, but that they are there and that they are protecting the state, they are protecting the republic, and they are protecting the Filipino people, and we must recognize that. For them to do their jobs, we must also respect the culture within the military, and that we must allow the military to run itself. Because iba ang patakbo ng militar, iba ang patakbo sa civilian. Kailangan natin kilala, yung mga opisyal dyan, ang gagaling ng mga opisyal natin, yung mga tropa natin, ang tatapang, kailangan talaga ay lahat ng suporta na ibibigay na kailangan nila ibigay natin hangga't kaya natin. Dahil itong mga ito ay itinataya na nga ang buhay para sa atin. The least we could do is to give it back. But again, right now, the military right now has uh, uh, has a big job to do, continuing big job to do. Although they have had some very good successes in the past few years, And again, we must commend them for that, the sacrifices that they've made. They have sacrificed life and limb over and over and over again for the sake of the safety and of the rest of the country. Kaya must always recognize that. And I always remind when I talk to soldiers, lalo na yung mga na-wounded na pinupuntahan namin yung mga sugatan na pinupuntahan namin sa ospital, sabi niya, sinasabi ko sa kanya, baka akala ninyo hindi namin alam ang inyong ginagawa dahil nasa area kayo, nasa kampo kayo, hindi nyo naririnig ang usapan ng civilian population. Na kami ay talagang alam namin ang inyong ginagawa, alam namin ang tapang ninyo, alam namin ang sakripisyo ninyo. Kaya dapat naman, kung anong magagawa namin para tulungan kayo at maging mas maganda ang patakbo ng inyong trabaho, gagawin natin.
One more. May time pa. Your grandmother, I understand, was a teacher. Your
Yes.
paternal grandmother was a teacher.
That's right.
My grandmother was the same. Message for our teachers. They're waiting for their salaries again. There were some before, but we still haven't brought them up to industry standard. Message for them, please. And what are our plans for uplifting the condition of our public school teachers?
Well, I have always considered all teachers, all of them. I consider them all heroes. Because you have to remember, parang sundalo yan eh. It is a calling. Teaching is a vocation. It's not a profession. It's not a job. Like I always say, may kilala ka bang teacher na milyonaryo? Wala. Hindi naman nag-teach yan. Hindi nagtuturo yan dahil gusto nilang yumaman. Gusto nilang turuan ang mga bata para yung mga bata handa sila sa buhay nilang parating na buhay nila. They want them to be prepared. And that is their vocation. And that's why we have to support. Nakikita naman natin, the teachers are having to do all kinds of other things. Pagka yung sweldo nga nila hindi na late, magpa 5-6 na yan, malulubog na sa utang yan, hindi na habang buhay na yan, nandiyan na kaiipit na sa kanilang mga utang. Kaya tulungan natin ang teacher, not only financially, make sure, simple lang naman, bagay na yung kanilang sahod na makuha nila ng tama. And we should, more benefits also. We should do more for their families so that they do not worry about their families. They worry about their students and teaching. Hindi nila kailangan naalala, yung anak ko may sakit, wala akong pambayad ng doktor, wala akong pambili ng gamot. Dapat hindi na nila kailangan dapat iniisip yun. I think speaking about teachers, you're ending up talking about the whole educational system. We really have to, with the new remote learning, we have to really try and make it better. The digital infrastructure obviously comes into it. But we have to think beyond the pandemic, and that our educational system has to be upgraded. And the first part of that is the support that we have for the teachers, not only financial support, but also support in terms of the infrastructure, the classrooms, the school buildings, the materials, the supplies, the school supplies, the equipment that they have. If you look at normal public school, how many of them have computers? It's 2022. Ang dami sa kanila walang computer. Mga bata hindi pa nakahawak ng computer, yung Game Boy nila at saka yung smartphone ng magulang nila, pero hindi sila humahawak ng computer. That's fundamental already in the year 2022. So something as simple as that, the equipment, I go to places, meron pang ginagamit na Marcos School building. The Marcos School buildings were put up in 1967, 68. Dapat yan 20 years, 25 years lang yan, papalitan na yan, babaguhin na yan. Nandiyan pa rin. Kaya yun, yung mga facilities kailangan natin ayusin. And the teachers, not only financial, not only in terms of benefits, but also in terms of refresher courses, retraining. Ang bilis ng takbo ng teknolohiya, for example, even social systems, political systems, economic systems are moving very, very quickly. And the teachers have to have a good awareness of what's happening in the rest of the world, so that the teachings that they are giving their students are relevant to the global economy are relevant to this new world that we are in, this technologically driven world that we are in. So it is not only hardware, it is not only finance, it's also software. And ang teacher, ang daling, syempre teacher yan eh. Madaling turuan ng teacher. We're talking about yung delayed na sweldo. Nung una ako naging congressman, yun ang nakita kong problema dun sa distrito ko. So nagtayo ako ng cooperative sa bawat bayan ng teachers cooperative para hindi na sila magpa 5-6, meron silang savings and loan, binigyan namin ng konting seed money, and they're very successful. So simple things like that we can do to help the teacher's condition, the teacher's plight. Then pag-isipan natin, pag magkapera tayo, bigyan natin ng scholarship yung mga anak nila.
There you go. Thank you very much. I understand you have another interview lined up for 10 o'clock, so I apologize to the person who is next interviewing you. But I would like to thank you very much. And one, last na talaga. A message to those who are watching you on Luminous.
Well, thank you very much for showing an interest and being part of this discussion that we are having with Attorney Trixie, talking about some of the issues of the day. You know that we are still in the middle of the pandemic, and I know that pagod na ang tao na dito sa mga protocol natin, pero pagtiyagaan po natin, mag-ingat lang po tayo, balikan natin yung dating protocol. Sana naman, pagka ganun ang ating ginawa, matatapos na itong problema na ito. But in the meantime, ako'y nagpapasalamat sa lahat ng nagpapahayag ng suporta at tiwala sa unit team, sa aming dalawa ni Inday Sara, at sana ipagpatuloy po natin itong ating advokasya ng pagkakaisa hanggat tayo'y magtagumpay, hindi lamang sa halalan, kung hindi sa ating kilusan ng pagkakaisa ng sambayan ng Pilipino. Maraming salamat. Salamat, Attorney Trixie. Salamat sa lahat ng mga taga-subaybay at magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat.